Welcome to bLU Talks.
I am so excited for that. You have no idea how long I have been wanting to interview you, especially on your own show, Amplify Your Message. It's like, you're the one who's done over 7,500 interviews, and you've given me the opportunity to do interviews as well, but to be the one giving it back to you and interviewing you, this is a delight.
You never asked me to be on Amplify Your Message.
I was going to ask you after the boot camp, and then I found out I was interviewing you today, so.
Okay.
Yes.
You can always ask, though.
Oh, I will definitely ask. And I also noticed that you have your new book here on the table because today is the day that your book launches. And I'm so excited. I haven't had my physical copy of it yet. So to see it here on the table, it's like, oh, it's real, it's real. How does it feel for you? Do you feel like it's real now?
Well, that's Jen's book, signed now on the table.
Good.
I brought it up to kind of have a placeholder at the same, like for the video, but then to make sure that I handed her the copy. So yeah, I mean, it feels real. So as far as whenever Laura mentions launch date, it's like literally today.
Yeah.
When you talk like publication date, today's the day that if you order from wherever, Chapters, Amazon, whatever, it ships today. So we've been doing pre-orders for like 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
And so today is what we consider launch day. And yeah, so I mean, it's felt real for me for a while. This is going to sound weird because I had the author copies. So physically, I've been holding the book for 3 months or whatever. Mm-hmm. I will say what surprises me is that you guys are actually looking at a physical book right now because I did the book with a traditional publisher. And what's really rare, some of you may or may not know this, we go buy books in stores, but if we haven't maybe been in the book business, I don't think we realize that it can be 2-3 years from the time you hand them a finished book to it hits the world. And this publisher here, I went to them and the book wasn't even like at the stage where we had made all the corrections.
Yeah.
It wasn't even fully edited. And they said, when do we need it out? And I said, 4 months. And like I said, the norm is 2 to 3 years.
That's a tight deadline.
Yeah. And so, and it was one of those things where I was willing to do it self-published. So it was like, guys, do you want to do it? And the founder of the company, Morgan James Publishing, I'd worked with him once before. He wanted to do it. And I think it's because he saw like I asked for your marketing plan and he's like, I want to be a part of this. I don't want to miss out on it. And so, so from my end, I put a tough deadline on them and they met all the dates, but they gave me tight dates. They went back to me and said, no, well, this means you have to have this in by this hour. If it's not in, you've missed your deadline. Mm-hmm. Like everything was like that. So to answer, I mean, that's a long answer to say, yeah, it feels real now. But for me, because I pushed it to be so quick, it felt real for a long time.
Yeah.
And I will add, I guess this is probably an important note. The reason I pushed it so hard, there were multiple reasons, but the biggest one, which I didn't share with them or most other people, is I am concerned, and this is not like a be forewarned or warning thing, but I'm concerned with AI in terms of what that's going to do to quality of books. Yeah. And I was scared to have this book be 3 years from now because AI, it seems like a day is a long time in what changing. And I'm just worried that the quality of books may not be as crucial as it is today. And I didn't want to wait 3 years to see. So there was a driving force behind me to want to have this book out before that. I wanted to have this book be a legacy book that people really said, this is a good book. And I felt like to feel that we're under a window. Now, having said that, it might go the opposite way, right? Like we're seeing people, there might be a thing with AI where people say, I want good books. I don't want this type of book. I'm only going to read good books. Like we might go the opposite way where people are like resistant to books that are written by AI, but we don't know that. And I didn't want to wait to find out.
So I started that way. No, that's fine. I started that way on purpose because it was something that I'm excited about because you're excited about. And it brings in that energy of passion. And you talk so much about passion and purpose. So for those who have never met you before, how would you share a little bit about yourself to somebody? So I'm going to ask you my favorite question that I love to ask in the Amplify Your Message show. If you could have other people describe you in 3 words, what would you love those 3 words to be?
Wow. Okay.
I know.
3 words is hard. It really is. I mean, I have to say one of them is passion. Like that, I'd be lying to say. I mean, actually, one of my talks is called Fueled by Vitamin P, as you know. And vitamin P is what I call passion plus purpose. And I say it's the only vitamin we can't buy in the stores, and it might be the most important one you ever take. So passion has to be in there.
Yeah. So passionate, they describe you as passionate?
I think so, yeah. Okay. Passionate.
Passionate.
I think another one would be, I hope. Now, again, these are things like you would hope people would say. It doesn't mean that it is true, but I hope people would say humble.
Ooh, humble.
I was raised by I don't know if I can add on to this why, but I was raised by a single mother. My grandfather was a carpenter with a grade 3 education, and he built a fiberglass space shuttle to scale in Prince Edward Island as a grade 3 education carpenter with a bag of nails and a hammer and a fiberglass, and the guy that got him to build it drew a picture of it on a cigarette pack, and he said, "Here you go, Eddie, there's the blueprints. And bear in mind, it's not to scale." That was his blueprints. Wow. And he did all that, and you couldn't get him to talk about it unless you asked him. Like, he never told a soul. I never heard him tell a soul. And I always said, I always asked him, why don't you tell people about that? And he said, well, I think actions should speak louder than words. If they see it and find out I built it and they want to talk about it, and he would get his face lit up, everything when he'd talk about it, but he never told people. And I always just thought, wow, he didn't need to go around saying what he did. And it's hard for me to say things like some of the things of my background, like multiple time TEDx speaker. It might seem easy when I'm saying it, but that's work. I've done the work to even be able to say that out loud about myself. And so, yeah, I realize it's a double-edged sword because I want to stay that person. And at the same time, I know that I can impact more lives if they know what I've done and then they listen. If you hear he's a multiple time TEDx speaker, you listen more. So it's like a constant balance of I want to share it because I know people will listen more. And at the same time, it really doesn't matter that much.
Yeah. So you said passion and you said humble. And what would your third word be?
This is a hard one because I would want it to be something to do with my children, but it's hard to summarize one word, like as a parent, that you can, like if you say good, you still need the extra word on there. Or if you say parent.
Well, think about the energy behind the words. So sometimes it is 2 or 3 words, but what is that energy that you want us to feel within the word?
Okay, so I'll use a word and then I'll add a second word and then I'll explain it, but quality time.
Ooh,
so quality is the word, I guess. Quality versus quantity. So how many people here have heard of the late Zig Ziglar?
Only because of you, but yes.
Okay, awesome. I'm glad, as long as I'm sharing his wisdom. So I went to an event and Tom Ziglar, his son, was there and he was running the event. And I asked Tom, I said, what are the things you learned from your father? And one of the things he said, which always, there's moments in your life that stick with you forever. And what he said about his father stuck with me. First of all, he said, this wasn't the thing, but I never watched my father once go to the car without opening the car door for my mother.
Aww.
And he said, I learned from that, and I've done that for my wife every day since. And then he said, so here was the big thing I took from him. He said, my father was on the road 300 and some days a year as a speaker. And this was before cell phones and even before beepers, probably. And so he said, but he would say bye to all of us. I think there were 5 or 6 kids, say bye to all of us. And then he'd fly to a place and get there and call and say, can I talk to the kids? And talk to each one of them. And what Tom said is he was home whatever amount of days a year, 40 days a year. But he felt like his father was home more days than the guy next door that was home every night that never talked to his kids.
Yeah.
So to me, quality versus quantity. So what I would hope is that when I'm with my kids, I'm with my kids.
Yeah.
And then when I'm not, I'm not. But when I'm with my kids, I'm with my kids. So quality time.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to me, that energy, it sounds like presence, right? And that actually connects to how we met. It's like, we didn't even say hi. It was just, you speaking on the stage, never met you before. You're just some stranger to me at that point, and I'm just in the audience, and I'm trying my best to relate to you, to be present with you, but without having that actual word conversation. And then you did what I knew you would. You came to me afterwards because of my presence. So I love that you bring that up, and I love that you tie that with your family, because that really showcases who you are as a person, which is where I really love to go with this. You have so many skills, just like many of the speakers here today. They're so multi-passionate, which is wonderful. But how do you connect them? How do we get to know Corey so that whatever crazy cool thing you do next that's hard for you to embody, how do we join you on that journey? how do we get to know you and get excited for you? Yeah.
I will say in the because you mentioned the let's say being in the moment, so presence in this book, which is, I mean, I'll talk about it. I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, I think, but it's a fictional parable, two strangers on a plane. I'll talk more about it later, but I will say one of the things we talk about in the book is the mayfly.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know how many people know about the mayfly. It's just a fly. But I heard this episode of, this is where it came from, if you want the behind the scenes story, because I never thought I would title a chapter in a book, The Mayfly. But where it came from is an episode of Everybody Loves Raymond. And the brother Robert said something about the mayfly and how long the mayfly lived. And so I went and researched on it, and I found out that the male mayfly lives 24 hours. The female mayfly lives, by the way, 3 to 5 minutes. Her whole life is create more mayflies. But that wasn't going to be, I felt that wouldn't be the right way to approach it. So I said, what if it was 24 hours? So the premise of it was, if you have 24 hours to live, how would you live your life? Ooh. Like, write down those things. And why? And so the question in the book, the character asked the other character, once the character said, this is what I would do, the older, wiser character said, then why aren't you doing that now? And so the reason I bring this up is because I feel like, and we talk about in the book many different ways about living in the moment, but I feel like that's one example of what's your best day ever. And that's the 24-hour day, like the mayfly. The mayfly lives its purpose for 24 hours. So are you living your purpose for 24 hours? And I think if you are, then you're being present. So that's a full circle back to the present.
Oh, no, I love that. The full circle. And that kind of brings us into your background with comedy too, right? That's some of my favorite comedians. They start out with a joke that you think is just way off in left field, and then they take that loop and they come back to that same thing. And to me, it's just like, oh, so good. So good. So if you started in music and you've started in comedy and you started speaking, where are you headed next?
Yeah, it's a good question because I don't know if it's a full circle loop like that.
Oh, it will be eventually.
But I will say in comedy, my wife, so I've done two things, and I won't share one with you because it'll ruin movies for you forever. And she's told, I think I was going to tell you the thing, and she said, don't tell her. Like, she won't let me tell anybody because it ruined movies for her.
Okay.
About how to figure out how the movie's going to end.
Oh, I
because it's a program, right? Like, it's all structured. So most movies end a certain way. Yeah. And if I tell you, and I won't, if I tell you this one thing, you'll start seeing the end of every movie ahead of time. Not every movie, but certain types of movies. Yeah. And so with comedy, I ruined it for her too, because she knows when this, not ruined it, but she actually, I think she likes it, but she knows when the show's going to end because they do comics do certain things because it's fundamentals. Like not every comic, but most comics follow a foundation. And so one of the things is what you said, we call a callback in comedy, which is where like you'll talk about something halfway through the show, and then at the end you'll make a reference to it, and then you slowly grab the mic and go start, and so you can see when it's ending. But when I ask most people, they're like, oh, I never saw that coming. So again, once you know to watch for it, to your point, the callback, that's the full circle moment you're talking about. Yeah. And that's a thing comics do on purpose. Having said that, like I said, I don't know Endgame. Like, cause I'm about to turn, I shouldn't say about, my birthday just happened. So I'm going to be 50 soon. And I feel like I'm just getting started. So that's why it's hard for me to say, 20 years from now, here's the end game, or 50 or 60. Oh, no. Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen, you guys know those names? They created Chicken Soup for the Soul. I realized a while ago, years ago, this helped me a lot, believe it or not, that Jack and Mark were about 49 when they created Chicken Soup. I think one's older, like one's a year older. So I think one was 48, one was 49. Can't remember which direction. And then I realized, Laura, this was like at 30, I think I figured this out. I was like, that means I get 19 more bonus years. Because they started their biggest thing when they were 49. Where some people say 50, life's over. I'm like, I'm not even started yet. So I feel like I'm 49 now. I feel like I'm just starting today. So everything I've done has all been building up to whatever. So I don't know long-term that way, but what I do know kind of the near future. And so what I could say as far as next, this book is a really big focus of mine right now. Like this is going to be a focus. I don't believe in like a 1 week launch or a 1 day launch. I believe in at least a 1 year launch, and that's just the launch. I believe it's a book you talk about forever. I'm still talking about my book of why and how that I wrote when I was getting together with Shelley 9 years ago. I still talk about it on shows. So I feel like that's a big thing, but the part I don't reveal often is when I wrote this book, it was written, it took quite a while to get it in my head. A year I had planned to write it, never made the time. A year from writing to finished to rough draft. and then a year till now to hold it in my hand.
Yeah.
And once I finished it, I felt like, and for those of you that read the book, it's you get closure with the book, but it also feels like these characters still should be doing something. Like it feels like there's more. And so I've written part 2 and part 3, and each one was written in like a week while traveling to England and back, 2 separate trips. Wow. So part 2 was on one trip, part 3 is another. And both books, just like this one, felt like they came out written, like ready, other than edits. And so I will say this, my wife and I, she read it. I read all 3 books to her. So she did it all in a row on a trip to Boston to go for our, I think it was our Harvard or MIT event. Okay. And she said to me, she goes, the part that blows my mind, she said, is I love this book.
Yeah.
And she said, and I love the second book, but the 3, she said, I think is next level. So this is foreshadowing to say, like, she's honest with me. And she said she thinks 3 is the game changer. So it's fascinating to me. Like that to me is like 8 or 10 years of my life, because this book, I feel, will have 2-3 year life at least. I think it's going to be evergreen forever, but 2 or 3 year life that it's in the moment. And then the next book will come out, and then the next. So that's like 10 years of my life probably, which is also why I needed to get the first one out quick because of the AI situation. But it's actually a trilogy, and that's the part I don't share often. Is there's 2 other books that follow these lives,
nice.
And I won't share and reveal too much, but I haven't even gone this far. But I'll say that for those that have read it or will read it, the main characters in this one, the wife of the main character is the second story, and their grandchildren is the third story.
Aww.
So it's like that. It's that kind of linear thing.
Yeah.
So you never get the same main characters for any of the 3 books, but it's all done. It's ready to go.
Oh,
I could literally get them edited and ship them out today.
Wow. Okay, I want to tell you a secret.
Okay.
That I just kind of realized as we were having this conversation right now. I've never really been a reader. When I was younger, it was Archie comics and Nancy Drew books, Archie comics, Nancy Drew books. And then, of course, the ones that the teachers just tell you to read and you kind of resist them, right? My first novel wasn't until my mid-20s. And then eventually I met you. And you're always like, did you read this book? I learned this from so-and-so. I read this over here. And then to have you not give me like those thick books to read, but the nice like thin ones that I can actually read and feel good about without the fluff. You're the one that really turned me on to reading.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right?
Wow.
So just know that you have impact well beyond what you could even imagine. And for somebody who, like, I didn't like to read because it was just too much fluff, or because I didn't understand. There was lots of words I didn't understand. And it kind of speaks to that point where you said in English in high school, you got a 49 plus 1 to graduate. That's how I felt.
I mean, interesting, like what Laura just mentioned is I did, and that's legit. I'm actually trying, I got to get time, but I live in the same town. Like I moved away for years, but moved back that I grew up in. And I'm planning to go to the school to get, I want to get a picture of that because I share the story so often. I want to show that I got a 49 plus 1 in a class I needed a 50. So I always say I legally graduated, but I didn't technically graduate. But what's fascinating about that is on the book side, to your story, I graduated high school without knowing the difference between fiction and nonfiction. And I shared that on a date, and I didn't get a second date. So like that's even something you should never share with people, I guess. But the other thing is I didn't read my first book until age 27. Which is probably why I'm so passionate about reading. So I read a book at age 27, or actually I'll start and say, I read 3 books in school that were forced upon me, and I never finished them. And by the way, they were good books. I went back later and read them. Death of a Salesman, Lord of the Flies. Yeah. I always want to say Rings there, but Lord of the Flies. And then what was the third one? Oh, I can't even remember what the third one was. I'll think of it in a minute. And then I tried to read Cujo, Stephen King. It didn't pull me in. It wasn't that it was scary. The movie was scary. The book wasn't scary. It just didn't pull me in. And then I stopped. So that was like up to like 18 or whatever. At age 27, I read a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People by a guy named Dale Carnegie. And his storytelling, boom, game over. Yeah. He pulled me in, and I read the book twice the same weekend. Hadn't read a book before at that point in my life. In fact, Blaze, who's here, I probably met you at a time where I still hadn't read a book, or I read my first book shortly thereafter. And then I read Think and Grow Rich. Yeah. And I always said, if you're going to start slow, those books will give you a bit of a head start. But to your point, Laura, probably why I'm so passionate about books is because I went so long without them. Yeah. And we're in Nova Scotia right now, and there's a group called the Dartmouth Learning Network. I don't even know if they're still around. And they brought me in to talk about it because of the fact that I'd waited so long to read books, and there were people in there that were, maybe 50 that haven't read a book yet. And so they want somebody to come in passionately talk about how books changed my life. And I ended up doing like 4 or 5 talks in this city about how books changed my life, to your point, because I wasn't a reader.
Yeah.
So I get it.
So I just want to end by saying thank you for the things that you intentionally do and the things that you aren't intentionally doing, because your passion and your purpose has that ripple effect so that other people can be more present in their lives. So a huge thank you from me. I know a huge thank you from other people you've touched along the way. I want to ask you, just with a few seconds left, if there was something that you needed people to take away from this conversation today, what might that be?
I mean, I always struggle with a question like this at the end because there's so many places I could go, and I fall back to this one often. It's like you guys heard the story, cliches are shared often because they're true and they make sense and they work. Well, I go back to the well a lot with this because it's what speaks to me and it's what changed my life forever without going back. Some of you would know, but I battled hypochondria and anxiety for about 4 years of my life, and there was no end in sight. And the medical world was just like, we'll just, take this, take that. And I'm not knocking it. It's just, that's what they thought the solution was. And nothing worked until I got tricked into performing stand-up comedy one night in Halifax. So this is a lot of this stuff is, close to home for me. Yeah. It was a place called the Pogue Fido.
I've been to the Pogue, yep.
And the Frigate, it was called downstairs. Anyway, basically, for me, my life, nothing changed until that night. And what changed was somebody said the next day, did you meet someone because you have a different energy? And it was that I'd started discovering a passion. And then that led me down to finding my purpose years later. But what I do know to be true, and I can't say it would be same for anybody else, is I took vitamin P that day. And that day, it was like within a month, no anxiety or hypochondria since, ever.
Yeah.
And the only thing that changed is I found my passion. Yeah. And then I found a purpose. So what I would say is live on purpose. And what I would say as well is if you haven't found a passion in your life, it's not easy, because some people want to do it, to jump from not having it to purpose. That's a leap I don't know many people that can make. So what I found is passion is your gateway to purpose. So find something you're passionate about doing, start doing it often, and then eventually the purpose will reveal itself. So what I would say in closing is live on purpose.
Thank you so much, Corey.
Thank you.
I really appreciate
this.
Thank you.